Hi, everyone. I have decided for this episode to go back to telling the story of my life. I said in an episode or two ago, as I continue this journey as a new podcaster, I'm going to share my views on a variety of different things. And I think anytime you're choosing to listen to someone and that someone is giving their thoughts and advice and viewpoints, it's good to know where they're coming from. You'll be able to go back in my podcast history and learn about why is it that Dr. D has that viewpoint on that situation. Well, if you look at the whole of my life, I like to say in some ways, I'm the whole package. Like I say, I've been on the wrong side of the law, and now I'm a law-abiding citizen. I've been in massive dysfunction as a child in my own family system, and then that bled into my adulthood, and now I'm pretty functional in life. I say pretty functional because, am I perfect? No. I never ever I say I never want to be done. I never want to be done learning and growing and adapting. The last episode, I talked a bit about parenting, and you can go back to that one. It was released on Monday, and I think it's episode 11. I think this will be episode 12. When do I change seasons? I guess since I'm the director, producer, writer, all of that, I guess I decide that. I don't know. I'll figure it out. Alas, I talked about parenting, and one of my things with parenting that I always remind parents of is your kids are always watching. Our kids are always watching and learning. And I'm a grandparent now, so I think of my grandsons. They're watching me as their grandfather, how I behave in the world. And so if you're a parent, remember that your kids, even when you don't think they are, they're probably listening even more. So that was the last episode. Now, where did I leave off with the story of my life? If you go to that episode, it's titled On My Own at 15 years old. I start there when I move out at 15 and a half, and then it ends at the end of my time overseas as a very young soldier. It ends with my time overseas in Germany. I was stationed at a very small outpost in Germany. It was called Kirschgoens Erzkaserne the Rock. That was its nickname. Oh, my unit. Fort Campbell was 2nd of the 327th. I remember that. Oh, 2nd of the 36th. I think I was in Delta Company, and then I was in a headquarters company right before I came back overseas. Because in the military, when you're changing duty stations, they call it PCSing, or when you're getting out of the military, they call it ETSing. And a lot of times, when you get toward the last 30, 60 days, you kind of get short timers disease. That's what they call it, when it's like, you're leaving soon. And I don't know if that's why I got attached to a headquarters. I was driving our XO, our second in command of our battalion. I was driving his Jeep, and then I don't know why that was. I don't remember why I got transferred out of my unit into a headquarters. That's kind of a cool job. And I kind of also think it was to help keep me on the straight and narrow before I left, because I think I remember my squad leader, Staff Sergeant Bedard. He was a mentor of mine, and I remember my first sergeant. I think it was First Sergeant Flood. I had many conversations with him about my drinking and life and all of that. So I think maybe they were like, let's take Douglas and put him over there where maybe he'll stay on the straight and narrow and he can actually make it back overseas without getting in any more trouble. Here's what I didn't say about my time in Germany. I was there for 18 months. I did get in formal trouble. Like, I got in a lot of trouble because of my drinking and subsequent behavior. But I actually got popped on a piss test. You're like, what? Popped on a piss test? Yeah. So in the 80s, I don't know if they still do this in the military. Maybe they do. They used to wake us up in the wee hours of the morning, and we would have to do mandatory urinalysis tests. We'd have to pee in a cup because you're not allowed to do drugs in the military. And mind you, this was, mid 80s, 85, 86, and a lot, not most, I don't know what percentage, but me and several of my soldier buddies, we used to drink a lot, and we used to also smoke a lot of hash. You couldn't really get marijuana, leafy marijuana that we're used to in the United States in Germany. I'm sure you could, but at the time we couldn't find it. But we could find hash. So a lot of us were smoking hash. And they do these random piss tests in the middle of the night, so that way you couldn't try to doctor it or they'd try to really get your actual pee. Alas, I did get popped on a piss test. And what's interesting about this, it was the first time, mind you, previous to this, and I think maybe I was there for about a year when this happened, I had massive problems with my drinking, like alcoholic, like out of control. I never once got offered help. Like, Douglas, let's get you to some counseling or treatment. That didn't happen. It only happened when I got popped on the piss test and my urinalysis was positive for hash. I got formal trouble. I got what's called a summarized Article 15. So in the military, you're under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. You don't have the same rights as a civilian. And so I got in trouble, and I had to go to some classes, and I had to do extra duty, and you kind of get grounded. I couldn't go out for a little while. So that happened while I was there. But it was the first time that I actually got offered some real help. I never got offered help for my drinking. It was control your drinking, drink like a man, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't mention that about my time in Germany. Now let's continue the story. So I'm at the end of my time, and at the end of the episode where I talk about when I was getting ready to leave, during, I think, the last 6 months or so, me and Cyndi had gotten back together through phone calls and letters. And she was my quote-unquote high school sweetheart. I mean, we actually met, I think, in 8th grade and had dated off and on and had broken up. And then I had been with another girl, Dawn, and then we had broken up while I was in Germany because I didn't communicate with her. I didn't write to her, so I don't fault her for that at all. And then me and Cyndi had gotten back together. So I went home on leave. I went home back to the Tacoma area for 30 days leave, and I'm pretty certain I stayed at Cyndi's, at her parents'. She was, I think, just graduated or close to graduating high school. No, she had graduated. And I do want to say, if at any time when I'm recording these episodes, you hear children in the background, like I can hear them in the headphones, so maybe you guys can hear them, maybe not. My wife and I, we live in a preschool. And so downstairs, Monday through Thursday, my wife is with her kids in the preschool. So 90% of the time, it is very quiet and pleasant sounds because it's not a daycare, it's a preschool. So it's more structured. They're doing, things together. There's no babies crying and all that. But sometimes there are meltdowns, just like we adults have meltdowns, kids have meltdowns. So if you happen to hear that in the background, all is well. Don't worry, they're in good hands. Now, so me and Cyndi had gotten back together. I went home on leave, and her parents, she was living with her parents. She had graduated high school, and she was working at Montgomery Ward's. I'm aging myself, I know, with that. So this is 1986, and we're in love again. And we got engaged. I don't know if I actually gave her a ring or not. And her parents were supportive of me at this time. Mind you, I had known her parents to this point since we were both 12 or 13. Her mom and dad were two people in my world that would be in my life for decades until both of them passed. Her dad was an alcoholic, Bob Jones was an amazing human. He actually taught me a lot about how to be in the world, and I did some drinking with him along the way. Yes, underage drinking. I remember doing that. He would sneak me beers. But, and her mom, Lucille Jones, was easily one of the kindest person you'd ever meet in your life. Classic example of someone living with an alcoholic and constantly just trying to make peace with the world and keep the alcoholic, under wraps and let's not talk about the problem, so, but very, very kind person. And we would always prepare people when we would bring them to the Jones household and to meet Lucille. We would say, just eat. And they're like, what are you talking about? Just eat. Yeah, just eat. She's going to offer you food and you're going to say, oh, I'm not hungry. Well, she's going to come 5 or 10 minutes later. Are you sure you don't want something? Just eat. So that was kind of a funny thing with going over to Bob and Lucille Jones. So I go back on leave. Me and Cyndi, marriage is on the table. And our initial plan was to wait. And because I had 10 months left of my active duty commitment. So I had signed up for 3 years active duty, and then I would do the rest in an inactive reserve status. And I don't know if at that time I had definitely planned to get out, but I think that was on the table. I remember my brother and he at the time was married and had kids, but he had started an auto detailing business. And I remember him and I were talking about, hey, David, you could get out of active duty, when you get done with your time, and we could go into business together. And so that was really on my mind a lot. I thought that would be really a cool thing. I've always had that kind of entrepreneur mindset even at that very young age. I was like, yeah, but I'm not sure if that was my definite plan. Like I was going to get out for sure, but it was definitely on the table. For me and Cyndi, though, it was the plan for me to wait, for us to wait to get married so that we could have a wedding and all of that when my time was done at Fort Campbell. Whether it be I take leave, come back, get married, and then we go to a new duty station, or I get off active duty, we get married, and I go on my life as a civilian, and then we're a married couple. So I go to Fort Campbell, and I always say this about my time at Fort Campbell is it actually felt like the military. So I know I always keep saying the time, but it's always just good to understand this time period. This is 1986. There's no big conflicts going on around in the world that the U.S. involved in. There were some small things, Grenada, Nicaragua, just small conflicts, but nothing big. So it's really peacetime for military. And my time in Germany, while I was in the Army and I played Army, it felt like, okay, here we go. We're going to the field again. We're going to do the same stuff. And then we're going to come back and we have to clean everything. And in garrison, when you're not in the field, it felt really loose in Germany. Lax, like, oh, big deal, whatever. When I got to Fort Campbell and just the 10 months I spent there, that actually to me felt like the military. I went to my unit, 2nd of the 327th, and in orientation, I remember these guys coming in as part of the orientation, and they were with a scout platoon, and they were like, hey, we're in headquarters company, and we're looking for anyone who wants to be in a recon platoon, a scout platoon. And I remember saying, we have dirt bikes, it's kind of cool. And it seemed like, oh, okay. So I put my hand up. And so I went to that scout platoon. So I was attached to the headquarters company and the scout platoon. And I don't know that we ever rode the dirt bikes, but we had them. Alas, it actually felt like, yeah, this is what the Army should feel like. I immediately met some friends, but one thing that happened for me is I started feeling really lonely. That's been a struggle for me my entire life. I've I don't struggle. I just thought it just hit my brain. I don't feel lonely anymore in my life. I feel like I have friends and support, and like I can be alone now and not feel lonely. That was not the case for me in some of my adult years. In fact, a lot of my adult years. And this was really, really significant for me. And just saying this out loud, I think I was really struggling, really struggling with depression and undiagnosed. Wasn't even a word that I knew now that I've been through a lot of counseling and have had help for depression. I think what it was is I was severely depressed. But I viewed that as I was just lonely and I needed Cyndi. I remember a phone call with her. Again, this is 1986, so it's on payphones or on a phone on base or wherever I was calling her from. I remember calling her and just saying, I can't wait. I want you to come now. I want us to get married now. And she resisted it, and her parents resisted it, and but I was pretty convincing with tears and lonely, and I want you here, and let's not wait, and let's get married now. We're both 19. I feel terrible that I don't remember our wedding date, but I want to say it was in July. I want to say that would be about right. I want to say it was in July, and it wasn't far from her birthday. Her birthday was July 21st. So I convinced her to come. I convinced her to put away her dream of having a wedding. I'm sure I painted it as we can have a wedding later. These things happen, but I'm sure that's what I painted out. We'll have a wedding. Let's just come down here and let's just get married. And, because then there were benefits, of course, with the military. If you're married in the military, you can move off base and then you get a stipend for living and all of that. And she did it. She convinced her parents to let her do it, and they put her on a Greyhound bus, and she came down to Fort Campbell, and things moved quickly. I remember it was the first time I bought a car in my life. We needed a car because we were going to live off base. We were staying in this motel just off base. This is anyone who's been to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. There's the Highway 41A, and it's all military stuff. It's kind of like JBLM in Tacoma, like Tillicum and Lakewood. It's all geared toward the military services and all those things. And I remember I have pretty clear visions of that time period. And she came, we got a motel, and first thing, like, we needed a car. And this, I think he was a captain or a lieutenant. He was leaving, so he was PCSing out, and he didn't need this car anymore. And it was an old retired State Patrol car. This is great. My first car was a Plymouth Grand Fury. Oh my God, this thing was a beast. I'm a car guy, so this is my first car. This is great. So, and $500, I think $400 or $500. This is 1986. That was a lot of money, but it was a big beast of a car, 4-door. And I bought it, and it had a cherry bomb muffler. And if you know what that is, just listen to a car going down with no muffler. That's pretty much what it was. Really loud, screaming fast. Okay. Probably about the last thing a 19-year-old kid, soldier in the military, needed at that time. But it was in front of me. I needed a car. I don't know if Cyndi resisted or not. It was just a whirlwind. I bought the car. And this is a funny part of the story, is they wouldn't let me drive it on base because it was so loud. You have to get your car inspected to be able to drive it on base. So here I am, trying to get this car registered on base. And I remember literally crying because I would take it. They were like, you got to take it to a mechanic and have it adjusted and blah, blah, blah. And I did all that, and I didn't have the money. And I finally got allowed to have it on base. It was a beast. Now, we got married. Here you go. We got married in the house of a justice of the peace, a local judge. I'll never forget the lady. She was I have fond memories of her. And a key point of our ceremony So we're like, hey, we need to get married, and must have got her phone number somewhere, who knows how. And we end up in her house, and she's like, you young man with a southern accent. She had a southern accent. You need to take that gum out of your mouth. I was chewing on gum. Like, so she marries us. That was our wedding. I do remember oh God. So for our honeymoon, we got a nice room. But here was my best decision making, friends. A few of my buddies from Germany, this is common, you'll end up getting transferred to the same base. And so my buddy Bert, and he and I still communicate through social media. We called him Bert. His last name's Ibert, Michael Ibert. He's from New York, and he was a really good friend of mine during my time in the military in Germany. And then he would be both of our friends in the time that I was at Fort Campbell. Alas, our honeymoon, we get a room, a nice room. What does David do, the newly married man? This is how great of a husband I'm going to be. I invite Bert over. Yeah, I remember that. I was like, oh God, dude, what are you doing? That was our honeymoon. And so again, this whirlwind just started happening. We got an apartment. We needed an apartment. Again, this is all a military area. Fort Campbell. There's Clark's. We actually got a apartment. We lived in Tennessee and I worked in Kentucky. If you know the area, Fort Campbell is right on the border of Kentucky and Tennessee. Alas, we got an apartment in Clarksville, a little 1-bedroom apartment. And then the financial stuff for me hit again, right? Because then I'm married now and we needed things. 1986, Michael, we needed everything. We didn't have anything. I think the apartment we had basic furnishings. I'm pretty sure it had a bed and a couch, and it had kind of a built-in dining room table. I still have a few pictures from that era, and I look at it and I can look at the things we went out and rent to own. Yeah, they love military for that. Or financing. We finance stuff. Oh God, you guys remember Finger Hut? I think Finger Hut's still around. She had a Montgomery Ward credit card. We maxed that out. Any credit we could get, we got. Neither of us really had any money management skills. I know her parents always struggled with finances. Bob always worked. Lucille actually worked for the state of Washington for most of her, she retired from the state. Bob would always mess up their finances because of his drinking and his business dealings. So I don't think Cyndi was really taught healthy money management either. I for sure wasn't. I had no idea. So we maxed out any income that I had. We maxed out. So almost right out of the gate, we were struggling financially, but we always managed to be the party apartment. We had some friends that, buddies of mine in the military that were also married. We started hanging out with them. Fawn and her husband. We had Bert. We had our neighbors that lived across from us. We would talk to them here and there. So now we're a young married couple. And I'm in the military. We're living in this little apartment. And I'm just, I'm going to work in the morning, coming home. Me and Cyndi started having, obviously, right, struggles almost right out of the gate. We got married way too fast. I shouldn't say, it's not that we got married we went from 0 to 60, 0 to 100 like that really fast. With me calling her and saying, hey, forget the wedding. Let's not wait. Let's do this now. I want you to come now. And then her coming down. Neither of us really having any skill set to be in a committed relationship. If you've been following along with my life story, you know that I didn't grow up in a family system where I had any healthy relationship skills. She was not raised in a system where she really had any healthy relationship skills. So you put those together, and She's across the country and I'm across the country from any family support. So we didn't have any direct family support there with us at all. It was all military. So we had relationship issues right out of the gate. I was a terrible husband. I was a terrible guy to be in a relationship. Why? Especially with Cyndi, because infidelity was normal for me. It was normal when we were just dating, when we were kids. I would cheat on her on a regular basis and she would always take me back and I would always promise, oh, it's not going to happen again. So did it stop when did it magically stop when we got married? No, it was horrible. I feel remorse just talking about this now, decades later, even with, knowing that I've changed as a human and a person, then when Cyndi was alive, I had the opportunity to mend that relationship. I feel like crap, just like having this conversation. And I remember, I'm sure she did this. I remember us arguing about it, but I think at some level she did this, and maybe there were conversations with adults to get Cyndi some support. She had a best friend, same name, Cyndi, spelled differently. Cyndi came down to live with us, and I remember not being happy about this because one, we had a one-bedroom apartment. Where was another human going to sleep? Where was another person going to sleep? Number two, we were struggling financially greatly. And one of my issues is she wouldn't work. Cyndi wouldn't get a job. I was like, you got to get a part-time job or you got to do something. There was issues there. And her and I were also very different in how we kept a home. The one thing my mom did teach me, among the few functional things, is to be clean. And Cyndi was not clean, so we would argue about the house. So then I'm like, another person coming down here isn't going to help this. So there was a lot of issues. Now, and so here's my best thinking. So Cyndi comes down to live with us. Literally, she comes down to live with us in our one-bedroom tiny apartment. And I think, and that's, what's interesting is, why would her parents, well, I guess we're all adults now. We're 19. So she comes down. And I try to cheat on Cyndi with her best friend, Cyndi. Yeah, it was a real treat to be with. That didn't go well, obviously. Cyndi ended up going back home, probably for that reason and all that. There was a lot of partying at our apartment. The few pictures I have, in fact, every picture I have of our time in Fort Campbell, the very short period of time, 10 months, there's drinking. We were drinking, smoking pot, just a lot of partying. When I wasn't being a soldier, which again, when I was on base and I was doing my thing as a soldier, I was on. That was one thing that Mom taught us, is to work hard, have strong work ethic. So and a lot of us, we'd go to work with hangover, but we worked. But when I wasn't working, when I wasn't in the field, we were usually partying. There was some kind of partying, and there was a lot of conflict with me and Cyndi. And she actually almost went home. Yeah, she did, because of my behavior when I was drinking and the fights we would have. It wasn't pretty. It was an ugly period for us as a couple. So that, me convincing her to come down and forego the wedding was not a good decision. For her, for me, for everyone involved. Somehow we made it through. To make this a little lighter, the car, so that big beast of a car, I'll never forget it. It was so fast. It was such a great car. Now, it was not a car that we needed to have. So we did trade it in. And my second car I ever owned was a 1978 Datsun 710 wagon. It was red. There are pictures of it somewhere. So that was a car. It wasn't a cool car, but it was a 5-speed. I think it was a 5-speed, maybe 4-speed. But so I traded in this beast of a car for a more economical, much better car for a young couple. We financed that car. at a car lot. Of course, any car lot on that strip, 41A, would finance a soldier because, you have guaranteed income. Did they have direct deposit then? I don't remember. I don't know. But alas, we got a car. We made it through. We got our first pet together. We got a cat, Chelsea. We did get a cat. Oh, that cat. That cat ended up living to be like 16 years old. Just crazy. Yeah. I've always had a cat. I always complain about cats, but I always seem to have one. And she was our first pet together. And we somehow made it through. It was 10 months, but there are a lot of stuff in that 10 months. A lot of stuff. I do have fond memories. We did cool. I still have some of the pictures. We, remember glamour shots. Her and I, remember we went to the mall, and those are some of my favorite pictures of Cyndi and I together. We did some pictures together. We did have fun. I talk about the dysfunction because I think it's important to be real, but we also had a lot of fun. We had good friends. The partying wasn't always terrible. We had good nights, but a lot of nights were not good nights. And a lot of nights ended up with fights, arguments, if not us, another couple friend, you just add alcohol and you know how all that stuff goes. So the time came for me to make a decision. Us, I guess, to make a decision. I know we both talked about it. Do I get out, get off active duty, or do I re-up, right? That's always the decision for someone in the military when their time comes to an end, unless they're retiring. And I had just put in, I think you start having conversations, serious conversations, 6 months before you're going to either get out, ETS, or if you're going to re-enlist for more active duty. And we had conversations, and here's cars. Cars came up again. So I'm a car guy. I'm like, oh man. At the time, there was the very first version of the Nissan Altima. My friend George, if our friends George and Cherie listen to this, they're going to appreciate this. I used to be a Datsun guy before they changed to their parent name of Nissan. But the first Altima came out, and I liked it. That was a nice car, but it was expensive. And the only way that they would let me finance that car is if I would re-up, because that's guaranteed. Then they know they're going to get the money because I'm probably going to transfer somewhere else. So the only way they would finance me is if I would re-up. And I remember me really leaning toward re-upping. Yeah, I think this is what happened. And I remember talking, they have recruiters on base you work with if you're in the military, other soldiers. And I was like, well, what will I get? Can I get a different MOS, a different job? Because I'm an 11 Bravo. I'm an infantryman, right? It wasn't really any transferable skills outside of the military, outside of security or doing something like that. Not the worst thing in the world, alas. And I think it came down to they weren't really going to offer me much. The only thing they were going to offer me is we could go back overseas. I could bring Cyndi with me, but that commitment would have been 3 years. If you go overseas with your family, you have to commit to 3 years. It wouldn't just be 18 months because it costs them money to ship everyone over, so they want you to stay over there for a little while. And I think with conversations between her and me, my brother was still in my brain because he's like, no, get out, come home. We can do a detailing business. That was really in my brain. And we decided to just get out. I was going to get off active duty and we're going home. And so I'm going to give this about 10 more minutes and then I'm going to cut this one off. So we decide to get out of the military and pack our things and come home. We decided to drive home. The military paid to ship our household goods, and we put the rest of the stuff in our car, that little Datsun wagon, and drive across the country and come home. Now, Cindy's dad was a long haul trucker. This is pre-internet, friends. There's no internet, no cell phones. I'm pretty sure, in fact, I know we used Montgomery Ward Travel. You would call them and say, hey, we're going from Clarksville, Tennessee to Tacoma, Washington. We need routing. And they would literally send you in the mail maps to routes and all that. I'm almost certain that's what we did. And her dad was a long haul trucker. I know Bob Jones told us which way to go. In fact, he probably said, don't use that Montgomery Wards. They don't know what they're talking about. I'm going to tell you which way to go and you go it. And I really actually looked up to Bob. He had a lot of his own chaos and a lot of his own behavior when he was drinking, but he was a good dude and he knew the road and he was a persuader. That guy was really good with people. So we packed all our things. I decided to not re-up and get out and come home. And I have pictures somewhere of the day we left. All our friends, we went to Fawn, and I can't think of her husband's name. We went to their house because that was another place we would all kind of gather. Oh my gosh, I haven't even talked about Brian Gravel. Brian was a really close friend. He became a really close friend to me and Cyndi. I met him. He was in my unit. He was a medic. So he was in my unit at Fort Campbell. And me and Cyndi became close to him. He was a really, really good guy. And I talked to him not so many years ago. He's from Texas. Alas, I remember he was there the day we left. Of course, Bert was there, or maybe Bert was already gone because I think he got out too and went back home. We all kind of either PCS'd, we either re-upped, if you did that, you went to a different duty station, or you ETS'd and you got out. And so picture a little red 1978 Datsun station wagon with me and Cyndi, and we didn't use the packing service good because we ended up having so much stuff in the car, and we had to pack stuff on top of the car with tarps on it. And we had our cat, Chelsea. Yeah. We traveled across the country in that little car with all our stuff in it, and Chelsea the cat. And I'll never forget, this is one of our funniest stories we've told for decades. We didn't get too far out of Clarksville. We're on the road and I'm driving, we're now, are we 20? 1987. I think we're both 20 years old. This is June of 87, July of 87, somewhere in there. And here we go. We're hitting the road. We're coming home, and I start smelling. I'm like, oh my God, what is that god awful smell? Oh my God, it's cat shit. And Chelsea, we had her litter box, but she didn't use her litter box. She was so nervous that she shit all over herself in this tiny car, and we're driving. So I'll never forget, we pull over to this gas station and use this gas station bathroom to clean this cat's ass and to get that god-awful smell out of the car, and then continued on. And the car started having problems, I want to say 1,000-ish miles away from home. And I remember calling her dad. I started having problems with the transmission, and I'm almost certain it was a 5-speed because I lost fifth gear. And the conversation, he's like, well, where are you? I'm like, well, this is where he's like, keep going. He says, just keep going. The transmission's going out. You can't do anything about it. Just don't be hard on it. I was really hard on cars. I was young. I was really hard. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll be easy on the car now. I probably drove that little Datsun like it was a sports car, of which it was not, and probably contributed to the demise of the transmission. So when I then decide to take it on a cross-country trip, the transmission's like, yeah, I'm done. Lost fourth gear, lost third gear. I'm sure I'm calling Bob all along the way, oh, I lost third gear, and it was in Boardman, Oregon. We made it all the way to Boardman, Oregon. Transmission's out. Call Bob, it's interesting as I'm saying this. I didn't call any of my family. I don't know why. Maybe I would have called my brother. Would he have came? I don't know. Fathers, I didn't, call Uncle Tom. I don't know. I was in constant conversation, and Bob Jones actually became a father figure for me. He was there for me a lot. And as I continue the story of my life, he'll be feathered in it in negative ways and in very positive ways. So he came and rescued us. He drove down, and we towed the Datsun back up. Gosh, I don't know if I sat in the driver's seat as he towed us back. I don't remember how we got it back, but we got it back. And the transmission was out, and so we come back to the Tacoma area, actually Spanaway. Bob and Lucille had a place, and we lived with them right out of the gate when I got out of the military, because I didn't have a job. The business with my brother never materialized. He ended up doing something else, and so that was sad. I was disappointed. And I think my first job out of the military, oh my God, it was long. I don't know in which order it happened. I think it happened in this order. I got a phone sales job. I'll never forget it. And we were living in Yelm. That's right. Oh my gosh, you guys. They had moved from Spanaway, and they were living in Yelm. And this is 1987 Yelm. Okay, it's not 2025 Yelm. Rural, middle of nowhere. I'm from Tacoma. But I got this job selling, basically fundraising for it was the Pierce County Deputy Sheriff's Association. It was fundraising for something. It was a god-awful job. It was literally cold calling people with a phone book, okay, if you remember phone books, and trying to get them to donate money, and they would get free books or something. Oh my God, it was a god-awful job. But that's what I was doing. That's what I needed we needed money, partly because I did not want to live with my in-laws for very long. Loved Mom, loved my mother-in-law, loved my father-in-law, but there was a lot of stuff in that house with Bob's drinking. When he was not on the road and he was home, he was drinking. So I'm pretty sure I quit that job. Yeah, I think I did. I just quit. I'm like, I can't do this. And then I was a long-haul trucker for a very short period of time. You'll hear me say, yep, I have a love for the trucking industry. And it's because of Bob Jones. That's what he did his whole career, with except little snippets of trying to do his own businesses. He would always go back to trucking. He was working for, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to keep this timer up, and I've got 4 minutes to wrap this one up. I'll end with my time as a long-haul trucker. It did not last long. Now, so I'm 20 years old, and I'm with my father-in-law, and we head out on the road. He worked for United Van Lines, which is moving and storage, and in the trucking industry, it's called your moving sticks, people's household goods. This is where I actually learned a lot about being out, meeting different people, customer service. Bob was really good with people, and he was really good loading trucks. It never asked me to move you with what I'm about to say. I'm actually really good at moving. It really got enhanced when I went on the road with Bob. He could walk into someone's house, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom. He moved rich people, 10-bedroom, whatever. He could look around at their stuff and tell you if it would fit in his 45-foot van or not, or if you would need 2 trucks or how much of the truck. And then he could just tell you where to put things in the back of this truck. It was magical. But he had done it so long, and I learned from him. I got really good at it really fast. Alas, being on the road, it's a lot. I can't imagine. I have an allure for trucking because it's just kind of cool being out on the road, but you get bored really quick. When you're with someone, your father-in-law, I was 20. He was, in his 40s, I'm sure at that time. And Bob also drank on the road. there were a couple times where I was literally scared for my life because he would drink and drive. And I'm pretty sure we were on our way home. Yeah, we were. And we were, oh my gosh, what is the name of the pass in Oregon? It's a really steep, I've ridden my motorcycle on it now. Devil's Pass, or it's got some scary name, but it's a really steep decline. So imagine being in a loaded 18-wheel truck with a driver at the wheel who's been drinking. I was scared for my life. So that lasted for one trip. I think less than, 3 months we were out on the road. Maybe a little more because we went from Portland, Oregon, all the way to Portland, Maine. We did a load out of there to somewhere on the East Coast, and then we ended up in Florida. Then we went to Texas. You're on the road, you're just taking loads across the country, and then we made it back home. I did one trip on the road with him for a few months, and that was it. That was my journey as a long-haul trucker, and I was determined when I came back to find whatever work I needed to get us our own place and not be a long-haul trucker. That was not the life for me. And we came back, and I think it was a mutual agreement too. I think Bob agreed that he'd rather be out on the road alone. He would try to, I wasn't the only person he would try to go on the road with. But I think it was a mutual agreement that we not work together that closely in those close quarters. And so we parted ways in that regard. And I can't remember my first job after the trucking. It might have been detailing cars at BMW Northwest. That might have been it. And that might have got us our own place. And here's where I'm going to close. Is me and Cyndi got a really nice little apartment off of 84th and Pacific Avenue in Tacoma. We had a different Datsun wagon. We actually had a little bit older. Bob was really good at finding used cars, and he was good at tinkering with them. But we had a car. We got our own place. And I think I was working at BMW Northwest detailing cars. And I'm not sure if Cyndi was working. She would work here and there sometimes, not all the time. She might have worked at the pizza joint. I think she worked at Domino's. I don't remember. We're young. I'm out of the military. We're back in civilian life. I'm going to close with that. And I always like to close with hope. So the hope for you when listening to this story is to persevere. That's what I think about. And this is going to be released on Valentine's Day. To persevere, to know who you are as an individual before you decide to get into a committed relationship. I think that is important. I think what we see now with young people, how they wait until they're in a career and they wait until they have some, solid foundation with their own individual lives before they get into a solid committed relationship or before they get married. You know what? I think there could be something to that. I think there's also something to people, like I know young people now. I think I have former students from Central who, Kayla and Tristan, they have been together since high school. And I hope they listen to this. They have been together since high school. They have 2 kids now. They're doing good. I also know that they both have good, strong family support in close proximity. I think that's really important. There is hope. There's always hope. Never, ever give up hope. Know yourself. Do the work you need to do on you. You have it within you to do amazing things. Thanks for listening.